second. Okay, we are now recording. And I'm going to share my screen here. And there's my Chewbacca. Okay. I don't think we need him anymore. Okay, so what we're going to start here with the Writing Grants resources. This is some of the information that I've compiled for you for extra information or more details. Okay. So we have a written tutorial for the application process for Dane G. Hansen, and we also have a video that goes along with that written tutorial. So if you are doing a grant specifically for Dane G. Hansen Foundation, use this information right here. Also, I think this is something I want to hit on several times today is when in doubt when you're writing a grant, each grant should have a contact person that you can call or contact ahead of time, and they can help you make sure that you fulfill all the criteria for the application. And also, if you need clarification, these are people to ask. It's better to ask before you submit the grant than to wait until you've already submitted and then you've done all that work, but you missed one little thing and then it disqualifies your grant from the competitive process. I don't know what I did with my chat box. Let's see if it'll pop up here. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right.
Monitoring it.
Okay, excellent. You guys, you got it all. Okay. I also found 2 archived webinars from WebJunction. They are from 2011 and 2012, but the information in there is still good. It's what to, just the basics for what to look for when writing a grant, an application, and the steps to go there. And now let me find my notes here. Grant writing, all right. So let's see, I think. Elements of a good grant proposal, that's where I want to go, right there. Is it going to load? Yeah, there we go. Okay, what are the elements of a good grant proposal? A competitive grant is going to end up being well researched and well planned. The goal of a grant proposal is to convince the committee that's reviewing every grant that's submitted, to convince the committee that your grant is the one to fund or one of many to fund. So when you're writing a grant, research the funding agency, see what previous winners were, because you can kind of, oh, well, this one won, they wrote a really good grant. You can kind of use them as a template for you. So you kind of have those benchmarks to meet by looking at previous grant winners. Some grants, some big grants out there require you to write a letter of application before you actually get to the application. And so that means that you have to do a lot of research before you can even apply. Also, what you want in your grant proposal is a detailed budget. Think of all the little things. If you are doing a facilities grant and you need to put in an HVAC system, don't just think about the HVAC unit itself, but if you need to do duct work, if you need to do new electrical, just think about little things too. If you're putting in for equipment, if you're putting in new computers, don't forget about cabling, mice, keyboards, those kind of things, those little peripheral things. Because the more you put into a grant, the more preparation you've showed. But also, sometimes a grant can't be fully funded, but it can be partially funded. So if you kind of pad your grant a little bit so that there's room to work with the grant committee. When you are writing your first paragraph, especially in CKLS grants, we ask you to set the scene, I think is how we phrase it a lot of times. And what we want to know is not only what your library is like, but also what your community is like. So set the scene, tell us your population, what kind of businesses and activities and community groups are in your town. All that kind of stuff help us get a picture, because while you feel like, oh, CKLS knows me, it's not just 2 consultants on the committee. It could be fellow librarians. It could be executive board members, especially for the big competitive grant each year, the facilities, materials, or equipment. That's a 6-person committee. And so not everybody's going to be as familiar with your library as you might think. So even if you think it's redundant, put a little time in describing your community in a way that helps us understand whatever the project is, whatever the grant is you're writing for, help us understand why this project would benefit your library and your community. I keep scrolling my notes, like they're written on paper and I keep scrolling them like they're on a tablet. When you write your plan, you should have a target audience in mind. I've noticed this in a lot of the programming grants that have been coming in. They have a great idea for a program, but they haven't defined who the audience is. Is it for children? Is it for all ages? Is it more adult oriented? That's something that we want to have addressed in here. Sometimes it might feel like, well, you can tell from the program that it's for kids, but it's always best to not assume when writing a grant. Even if you think it's blatantly obvious, go ahead and write it down. The audience is kids, preschool to 4th grade, whatever it is. Also, what's also helpful with a grant is telling what's already been done. So you're getting new computers. That's your grant, right? And we just made this up. So what you want to do is say, well, we've got new computers in these years, and now they're 5 years old, and it's time to replace them. Explain the work that the library's already put into the project. That's going to show the grant committee your buy-in, that you're already committed to this project, that you're already put work into it as well. Also, you want to have clear and measurable goals. You want to know that this grant is going to go for this project. We want this project to meet X, Y, and Z goals, and this is how we're going to do it. Plan it out step by step. And then the budget section should include any sources of additional funding. So I know a lot of CKLS grants are matching. So you can also, we always ask, where's that coming from? If it's coming from your general budget, say it's coming from your general budget. If you had a fundraiser or a donation and that donation is going towards it, that should also be in your grant proposal. That also shows the commitment to the project, and that there's other sources of income. It makes the project stronger. Okay. Also in your budget, make it as itemized as you can. And I know that when you're writing for a project that you can't start until you get the funding, you can't be as specific as you may like, but try general specifics. So you know that you're going to get 3 monitors and 3 towers. You can look up a 23-inch monitor is X amount of dollars. We need 3 of those. So in your line item, it would be monitor, $120 times 3 for the total amount in the final column, and be that specific all the way down. If you need to buy wireless mice to go with the new computers, then put those in the line items as well. If you're going to get a specific brand, put that in there. If you don't know the brand yet, I would say in your narrative process, say you're still looking at brands depending on grant funding that comes through. If you can't be explicit in a grant, explain why you can't be explicit in the grant. Like you say, we're going to get a copy or printer. We were looking at these items, but we don't know which one we're getting until we know what funding is secured for it. That way we know let me think. That way we know that due diligence, you've thought this through, you're going through all the angles, and it's not just kind of like, we might get a printer, it might be this one, I don't know. It really changes the tone of your grant when you can say, this is what we're thinking about. We can't move forward or make a final decision until the funding is through. Okay. When you're doing an application, a lot of the forms ask for a supplementary material. For instance, in the system grant questionnaire, and I believe in our technology improvement grant forms, you have to sign in into a Google account so that you can attach items, and those are for your supplemental materials. For the technology improvement grant, we're asking for a technology plan for your library, and if you have one, you can attach that. We're also asking for photos of what you're looking for, and that really helps us see what kind of research you're doing and see what groundwork you've already put forth on it.
Maribeth, can I hop
Yes.
in for just a quick moment?
Yes, please.
One of the reasons that at CKLS we're requesting you submit these items is because if our taxpayers ever come asking, we're able to very quickly and easily show them the value and merit of us providing these grants to the library. This is called outcomes-based evidence, and it's not a new thing, but it's important that we be ready for that.
Excellent. Thank you, Gail. I appreciate that. I think another thing to keep in mind when you're attaching additional information is to be conscientious of what format you're sending it in. A lot of grants are going to give you a specific format. For CKLS stuff, since I'm pretty tech savvy, I can work with just about anything, but always the best bet for any format is put it into a PDF format. And the reason you want to do that is because then it locks the document the way you want it. It's going to look that way. I can't make changes to it. It can't get corrupted along the way. And everybody can read PDFs. They just need a free program to open it up. So it's kind of like the universal format for documents that you don't need to edit in any way. I will give an example. We had a submission for, it was a technology improvement grant, and for the attachment for what they were looking at, they sent it as, they saved the web page, and they tried to send the web page not as a link but as a file, and because I knew how to open it, I could, but when I was previewing it, it was just a bunch of code. And you know, if they had gone to print and saved as a PDF from their print file, it would have saved the screen kind of like a screenshot, exactly what they were seeing, and that would have eliminated any error. And if it had been like an outside granting agency, they might not have been funded because they couldn't read that format, the HTML save as a website format. So that's something to be conscientious about.
One other thing, Mary
Yes.
Beth, when you're reading your application requirements, they're going to tell you exactly the format.
Exactly.
So be really careful. Just don't assume I can send it anyway, because it will automatically be rejected. No one, Mary Beth will take the time to try, but a lot of places won't. And another thing, just be consistent. Like if you start writing a grant proposal for us, do that again, the same format for the next funding agency. So once you get a habit of doing this, you're going to be in the grant writing mode, and you're always going to be making consistent, great applications, because it does make a difference. And being on a grant committee, if I have 30 applications, I'm going to vet them like, well, this person didn't do this, they're going to go over here. I'm not even going to give them a nod. So everything, if you start now and use these principles, you'll have a lot of success.
Thank you, Margie. Yeah, that's a very good point. And that's something I meant to say earlier is one of our goals for all our grants that we do through CKLS is to teach you how to write a competitive grant for outside the system as well. So ours are pretty, I would say, lenient on the grant side, but it's a good starting point for learning how to write a grant. We try to give you all the instructions within the grant itself so you can build a great grant from there. Andy is also saying in the chat that if anybody wants help with document formatting, feel free to ask. And Andy can help. And before the grant is due, I can also help with that as well. Probably not the day of. If you need help with formatting, that needs to be, don't wait till the last minute to do that. Grants are not something you want to procrastinate on. Gail's also commenting about grant applications is a lot like going through job applications. Misspellings, funky formatting, incomplete applications are going to be put at the bottom of the pile or discarded altogether. These are little things that will make your grant application less competitive. Okay. Also, a lot of outside grants will ask for you to submit the number of copies that they need for their committee. At CKLS, we make our own copies, but that's not always the case. So pay attention to the instructions on an outside grant. They're going to tell you exactly what they need, and if you don't follow those instructions, then your grant could be kicked out. Disqualified, I guess would be a way to say that. And of course, pay attention to if the grant requires a local match or additional funding, or you know, if this grant is not funded, can you move forward? Pay attention to those questions. Those are very important. A lot of funding places, CKLS included, doesn't always have the money in the pool for all the applications that are out there. CKLS, in the past couple committees that I've sat on, have split it as much as they can to give as many different libraries funding. Some grants will do that, and some will just grant the amount that's requested. It all depends on the funding agency. Excuse me. Okay. All right, so let's go to so we want the form to be complete. We want it to be thought out and planned. We want to see that the project you are asking for is it's going to do that again. Okay, is described well, and we understand the process, like the solution and everything through there. So in this grant, and I'm going to show you a new form that's replacing these old paper forms, but we'll do that at the end of the workshop. Can libraries apply for 501c3 grants? Amy, I'm not quite sure what you're asking here. Your library probably would need a 501c3 status if that's the qualification that the grant is asking for. Most public libraries do not have a 501c3 status, but they might be able to have the county's economic development file the grant on their behalf, or another 501c3 if you have a friends group it's 501c3. Then they might be able to apply for the grant for you. And then you have to, you know, do the grant through that agency that filed for you for that grant. Okay. One thing I like about this grant is that it uses the form, and I think if your grant comes with the form, whether it's print off or online, if you are going to answer in a different way, somewhere in that question blank, it tells you where to find the answers, so that when I'm reviewing this grant application, I know that you didn't miss the spot, you're just going to answer it later on. This helps, especially if a copy is faxed in. They're all loose leaf, things can get shuffled around. This helps the grant reviewer know what they're seeing. Okay. So this grant application, this is one that the grant committee last fall was really impressed with. They thought that it was thorough and well thought out. One thing that you're seeing is in the additional information, they're giving as much detail about the equipment that they're asking for as possible. They're not only just saying this is the make and model number, they gave us the description of what this copier can do. They gave us the description of what this receipt printer can do. And then they also added their cables, extra supplies, and then they are answering each question. Also with each question in the grant, they're kind of reminding us, just think that we're short attention span on the committee. They're reminding us what that question was. They didn't write the whole thing out. They're just, giving a little blurb about what it is. So they're describing their location. They're describing the problem. They're describing what they think the solution is, and they're breaking it down as to what those steps are. They're also showing the outcomes. how the installation of these 2 printers are going to help their library, how it's going to keep costs down, how it's going to help the needs in the community, as this is the only place to print from, and the evaluation. Some people, when they do this part of the grant, they kind of fudge it a little and they just say, well, we'll know it's a success because people are happy. But this time they took some time and said, you know, you can see the cost saving with, you know, amount of toner and paper and the use there. It'll also be able to maintain additional records, and patrons will be able to tell them, I appreciate now that I can print at this library. Also, we have some of the housekeeping stuff. Who's our point of contact? If you have a change in personnel when the grant is in motion, that's not going to disqualify you. Just make sure you keep the grant committee, or, you know, the contact person informed. So you've got the grants, but now, you know, staff has changed, and so the person who's reporting is going to be different. Go ahead and contact the grant contact person and let them know that X is no longer going to be our contact person. Now it's going to be, and give them all the information that they need. And here we have, what are the source of the matching funds? It can be a 1-sentence answer. They don't have to be long and eloquent prose. It can be straightforward and to the point. So we just felt like this one was a very clear application. Forgive me, I'm getting calls from people. Okay. Okay. All right. And this one we really liked as well. These are from the equipment grant last fall. And so here she put at the bottom, please see attached narrative for answers and budget. So again, they put somewhere on that sheet that I'm attaching the answers to all of this, so that I know that they didn't just forget to answer it. And this grant narrative, she just numbered them, and she was able to get most of her answers all on one page. And that's fine, because she can concisely tell us the answers to each of the questions that we're asking for. She's describing the situation. She's setting up the library and community setup right here from stage 1. She's saying that the library had fires in the last 30 years. It's been hit by lightning. It's had a roof fire. It's also close to other places that have had fires. So she's already building that need right there. So then it talks about the system and how that it's, you know, it's aging, and while it's not broken yet, it's better to be proactive in a safety feature like this. Then she talks about, this is 4 and 5, or how do you evaluate the success? And she notes that patrons probably won't notice notice this, but they will know, I mean, unless it, hopefully they'll never need to use it, but they'll only notice it if it's in need of crisis. However, you can tell that it's improved just by the improved safety of the equipment. Also, she gives steps of implementation, and then she lays those steps out. So you can see that she's already got this planned. A, B, C, D. You got it figured out. And then the budget. Her budget is not complicated here. It's just these items go for this. This is how much we're putting in. If the grant is for less than what your project will cost, that's okay to show that, because that shows that the grant committee, that you have just as much or more buy-in to this project already, because you're already putting X amount of dollars towards it. This grant is just helping you get there. I think that's a very strong thing to show. We had another library do that as well. They were getting, I think, a new copier, and the copier is going to cost more than the grant, but what they're asking for, you know, help them reach that goal. So I think that was very, very helpful. Okay. Here's one. I hope it keeps it. There we go. This one I call it asking for the moon, and it's not like they were asking for like unicorns and rainbows with this grant, but they asked for a lot of different things. And last fall we had $35,000 in the pot for this grant, and we had requests for over $63,000 worth of stuff. So grants, I don't want to say stuff, grants for equipment. So we had the grant committee. I was an advisor. I wasn't making the decisions. The grant committee couldn't grant everything to the full request amount. And this one, they were able to say, these are the priorities, so we're going to give you money for those. Not all grants are going to work this way, but if you have a question about that, talk to the contact person about the grant, and they can tell you if that happens or not. They can guide you through that process. Okay, so here's the supporting documentation. One thing I don't like about this grant is that combined answers, and some of those answers kind of merge together, but for clarity from the grant committee's point of view, this made me have to kind of switch back and forth. Okay, what are we, what's 2 and what's 3? I had to go back and look. I see a question here from Patty. What are your thoughts when the answer is maybe to will this project go forward if not funded? I think maybe is if it's honest, that means that you don't know. I would hope that you could say, yes, it can move forward. If you say no, at least for CKLS grants, and CKLS can't fund that full amount, then you're going to have to be discarded because you said you can't take a partial amount. Maybe I think is better than no, because then you can decide once you get the grant whether you can accept it or not. So you'd still be competition. Yes,
Gail, in my experience on just hanging around long enough and sitting on enough of these evaluation committees, that maybes aren't awarded either, because we have so many positive yeses that maybe is iffy. We just don't have more money to go around, and we want to definitely fund the yeses. So okay. I would say no to a maybe also.
Okay, I'm going to check when we go and look at the updated forms, grant forms for CKLS. I'll check and see if I even have maybe on there. I might just have yes or no. I may have taken that maybe off.
Yeah, and it might be even something to look at other grant applications, because I've been on a few committees before in my prior life, and I'm not sure if I ever remember if that was a qualifier, because it puts a lot of it's a problem emotionally, because we want to give you money, and then it kind of it's uncomfortable for your grant people. So anyway.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you both, Gail and Margie. And I think with a grant, you want to sound self-assured and, I've got this planned out. I know exactly what we need. And then you say, well, maybe. And then it goes a little wishy-washy. So I mean, that's just one of those things. So if I haven't taken the maybe off the grant form, I might go back in there and take the maybe off the grant form. Because if maybe means no, then we should just say, if the grant committee thinks maybe means no, then we should just take the maybe off. Okay. She put the grant or the budget right here in her format, and then she's giving pictures of the things that she's looking for. And this is one thing I wanted to show about your supplemental information. Pay attention to how it looks on your screen. Right, I've read through the grant, so I know what I'm looking at, but I've had a couple grants where they just gave me random pictures, and I had to figure out what they went to. I had one that was showing their current computers, and in the grant, they had described the computers. This one's old and doesn't work. This one works some of the time, that kind of stuff. And as the grant liaison, I guess is the way to say that, I went through and for the grant committee marked which ones they were. But for big grants outside the system, you're not going to get away with that. If they have pictures that they don't know what they go to, you just wasted your effort, your time putting those pictures in. So look at captions, try to put a little bit of description about this information. Maybe what I like to know, and this might be just a personal thing, why is this chair cart better than the one that I searched for that I found for $50? You know, give us reasons why this is the one you're looking at. You know, this is the right size. It's the only one that matches your chairs. If you have those reasons, then we can say, oh, well, that's why they had to spend $20 more, because this is the only one that fits what they have. So while these pictures are very helpful, I think that giving a little bit more information on the additional supplemental pages, the attachments of all the information, don't forget to put in the descriptions and the reasons why. Giving us a bunch of pictures with no context isn't going to be an option. I mean, isn't going to be your best step forward, isn't going to make your grant as competitive as if you were put in that detail. Okay.
So Maribeth, this is
Yes.
Patty.
Yes.
In your description, you called this asking for the moon. Is this one particularly challenging because they asked for so many what appeared to be unrelated things, so it was hard for the committee to decide what to? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes. They're asking for the moon, which all the stuff they're asking for, we could see a need for, but we could also say, like, you know, every grant committee for CKLS has different people on it, so they all have their own, you know, culture, so to speak. But when you can see a uniformity, it's easier to say, okay, this all needs to be done as a group. And when you do individual items like this one, then it's going to be like, okay, I can see the need for these, but these are the most important, so these are going to be moved to the top of the list. So that would be a choice on your part. If you're like, well, we need all these things, so I'm going to see what I can get, then an application like this I think is perfectly acceptable. But if you're like, we need all these things and they need to be done together, then you should write the grant as these are a collective unit and they should be considered as a collective unit. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Gail, and I'm not really sure if this fits in at this point of the webinar or any place else. One of the things that the CKLS Grant Selection Committee has started looking at and using as part of their evaluation is how not only has the library received a grant in recent years and what the grant was for, but also how active that library is in the system. Are they attending CE events? Are they fielding someone to vote at business meetings and things like that? I don't think that's going to be the case for other grants outside of the system, but within the system, that is something people are looking at, and it's something you need to be aware of.
Thank you. There's one more thing I wanted to point out on this one, because it's something that you can't really control, but it's something to be aware of. So when this grant was first submitted, this was the last page, which is their quote. So it's showing us that, you know, they've done their due diligence, they know how much this project is going to be, they've got a quote from a vendor. However, I can't read this, and I printed it out and I still couldn't read it. So I asked the librarian to send a transcript, and so I got a transcript, which I added to the packet before it went to the committee. So this is very important, example of why you want to be in good contact with the grant contact person, especially for CKLS stuff. If I notice that there's a problem with viewing something, or you know, something didn't quite go through right, I will contact you and make sure that information gets in, because I want you to have as complete of a grant application as possible. So this was submitted early enough that I caught the error and we were able to get it fixed. When you're submitting a grant outside, send it to somebody, get some outside eyes on it, send it in the same format you're going to send it to the grant committee if at all possible, because they can tell you, oh, this page scanned in upside down, or, you know, I can't read this quote that you gave me. you know, I know what you're going for, but it's not helpful. And that will, I think, really put, you know, put your grant at the next level. Some other things to consider with grants is that editing, we talked about this a little bit, editing and grammatical errors are going to make, if they get too big, they're going to make your grant less competitive. Have somebody else proofread it. Now, if you know, put a comma where a semicolon was supposed to be, I'm not sure anybody's going to dock you on that. Little ones are okay, but if your grant is just riddled with errors all the way through, it's going, you know, they'll build up. It's going to make an impression on the grant committee, and not what an impression you actually want.
Yeah, I'm going to weigh in on this. The last time I did this, I read every grant application. It took me hours. Now, that's just the way I am. Some people may not, but it really, because I feel like if this means a lot to you, then the application should mean a lot to you. So, and you know, CKLS, we really want to award money. We really want to give it to you. Now, if you're applying to the next level, I'm not so sure, but a well done application is really going to speak volumes to the committee, because they don't know you. The impression that they get is what they read and what they see, and it's on paper. You know, we have established a relationship with all of you, so we know what your situation's like, we know what your buildings are like, you know, so it's a little easier for us to imagine that. But what Maribeth said is really true. And you know, sometimes then you have to go, well, you know, library B did it way nicer than library C or F or G, so I'm not going to give them a nod. So just from experience, help us help you.
Thank you, Marty. Think of it as like you're turning in your final paper for your English class, and you know, it had to have the paper cover on it, but it was a ready, kind of a ready to publish final you know, work piece that you were handing in for your final grade. There, you know, there should be somebody that you know that can proofread for you. If they're weak on proofreading, give it to several people, give it to more than one person, and they'll help you find all those things. All right, so lost my train of thought. I was so we did have a couple of grant applications that had to be discarded right away. One, it was faxed in, and it had the cover sheet, and then it had the questions, and then it had the pictures of what they want, but there was nothing filled out. There were no questions answered. It was incomplete. And because there was, I don't know if something got lost in the fax, like it was double-sided and the fax just went through single-sided, or what happened, but it was incomplete. And if you page your formats, or sorry, page your application, page 1 of 2, you know, that way when the person that's compiling all the grants give to the committee, they can see that a page is missing, something is wrong. I do my best. I try to do my best on catching all those, but they do slip through. But that would be a way for me to know, oh, the fax came through, but I'm missing pages 3 and 6. You know, that would help make sure that your grant comes through complete. Also, titles and headings where appropriate would also help with the organization of your grants. And pay attention to format. Use one font the whole way through. Don't use a bunch of different fonts. If you use an outline format, you know, 1, then 1A, 1B, be consistent with that all the way through. Don't start with numbers and then move to Roman numerals. You know, be consistent with that all the way through. I think it's all, you know, consistency, being thorough, grammatically correct. I think everybody can say, and Smith Center saying, the Dane Jean Community Foundation grant, are you willing to accept a grant less than your requested amount? If you answered yes, but there's a minimum amount required to proceed, please enter that amount below. If you said yes, you were willing, or if you said you were not willing to accept a lower amount, we were told those requests were eliminated. I think a lot of granting agencies want to know if you're flexible with it, because they want to give money to as many people as possible as well. And so they want to know that you're willing to work with this project with the funding that you get, and not, you know, within a rigid outline. Sometimes that's not possible. And if that's not possible, you should be honest about that. It's not always going to be a, you know, a direct elimination, but it is a considering factor. All right, I have one here labeled risky, and it's one that some people liked it when they saw it, and some people did not in the grant review committee. Is it going to show up? Oh, here we go. So they used a theme throughout their grant proposal, and so they had a bunch of different items that they were asking for, and they all tied it back to the theme. So they made it one unified unit with their theme, but there are a bunch of different requests on there. Some of our grant committee, let me pull up my notes on this one, thought it was, you know, creative, but others felt that it was too kitschy for a grant and it needed to be more serious. So if you're a creative person and having a cut and dried bland grant proposal is daunting and boring to you, just be careful with going in that direction. See if there's a way to, you know, maybe have a theme without being, you know, crossing that line where they're thinking you're being indifferent or blasé about it. So just keep in mind that, you know, when you take a creative route, you can't always know how it's going to be interpreted on the other side. So that's why this one is risky. I'm not going to say that it's always wrong. I'm just going to say that, you know, you're making your grant a little more risky than you probably need to. Okay, so Smith Center is adding, we broke our requests down into segments, with the minimum being what we thought was the starting process for the larger request. So that's also something to keep in mind, is that when you write a grant, sometimes you have to break it down into, we can do this with this amount, we can do this with this bigger amount, so that the grant committee can see what your plans are, your thought process, and how the funding is going to affect it, and what kind of power that the amount of funding has on your project. Okay, I wanted to show you programming. I wanted to show you our new grant setup. So I took our paper forms that you see, and I put them into a Google format for you. All of these, let me show you where to find them. All of these can be found on the CKLS website. Here on the grants tab. So let me put that in your chat here, if it's gonna go. Margie has a good suggestion, using creativity for showing what you need, like using the graphics to show the need. You know, we had one that requested chairs, and to really show how bad the chairs were, she had them stacked together with the backs off and the seat, you know, the seat was loose, so she showed that in the picture. And that's the kind of creativity that would go well. Also, if you need a chart or something like that, that would be some creative outlets for you as well. Okay, so here is the link for the grants page. I have the system grant questionnaire at the top. I will be moving that to the bottom here in a couple of days or weeks, by the end of the month. And so we have the technology improvement grant. I have a brief description, find out more. We also have the upcoming materials competitive grant, which will open in April. Continuing education grant. Conference grant. This is for if you're going to a big conference, including KLA. This will be, you can apply for that. We give 4 out a year. We also have the programming competitive grant, which is the one I'm showing you here. Let me see. It gives the purpose of the grant, breaks it down for what is matching, and then the application process. Note that we say there is the application to fill out, when judgment will be given, and when you'll hear back about your application. And then we also say if there's any follow-up. That's one thing I haven't mentioned yet. Sometimes your grants require some kind of follow-up, maybe just a report of this is how we spent the money, somewhat more of a narrative talking about how the program went, or, you know, the new addition is great because now we can do this, this, and this. I know that I think it's probably some grants have asked for a recipient to come and speak at one of their events. That's not always going to happen, but just know that there's different ways that we can report. Yeah, we are seeing the staff side of this one. Let me see if I can get the link at, put it on a different browser here. Because I'm logged in as me, and so that's why. Okay, let's try this different. And, okay. And share again. Here we go. Just do desktop. Okay, this should be the staff side. There we go. That should look more like you. We're going to ask you for your email address. That's because we're getting your contact information. Here's another place where you can be creative when you name your program. If you name it something memorable, that's going to help the committee out a lot. If it's just, you know, book club, and I have 4 other program requests for book club, it's hard for me to keep those straight in my mind. But if this one is super awesome, fantastic book club, I'm going to remember that. So that's one place where you can be creative, and I think that would increase your chances rather than decrease. So here is something that I've changed from the paper format. Before, we asked for grant amount and local amount and percent requested, and I'll pull that up. Nobody knew how to answer that. It was answered different every single, not every single, but it was answered differently. 50, you know, one library would say, well, we're matching at 10%, so we're asking for 90%, you know, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So the grant amount requested, and then the local amount, and then the percent of grant amount requested. It's just one big confusing thing. So here I've broken it down. Amount requested for the CKLS grant plus your local amount gives us the total cost of the project. You've already checked up here whether you are a major resource library, whether you're a linking library, what percentage of your local match you need. So you've already told us that. We're not asking that information again. So this will tell us the total amount of the project, you know, minus your local amount match is going to give us what you need from CKLS. I think that's clearer. I hope everybody else thinks that's clearer as well. We also have the basics. Who's responsible for the grant administration? Who do we contact for the final report? Who do we make the check payable to? And then we give you a space, and this is a paragraph form, so just because there's one line that you see here, you can actually type in as much as you need here. Please describe the program and why it should be presented at your library. We give you a budget, space for your budget. If you have it in a chart and it doesn't fit into the grant form, this is where you could say, you know, I'm going to send that separately, or, you know, see some and then contact me and let me know. Fill out that answer. I've marked it so you can't just skip it, but if you fill out that answer, that'll let me know that it's coming and it's something I need to look for. How will this program affect the library, staff, and patrons? What are the benefits? And then this is something new we've asked as well, because we're asking for electronic signature. We don't ask for a board signature as well, but I do ask, is your board, does your board approve of it, or does your school principal approve of it? So that's how we've changed this one. Okay. And I'm going to show you, I think I'll show you the technology one because it's a little bit different. Grants. Any questions so far? Have I forgotten to mention something?
The chat room's been flying. This is awesome.
It is awesome. I am so happy you guys are so interactive.
Embracing it. I added the links that I shared for the 5013C status to your writing grants resources page from your document, Maribeth, with the links there for them.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So one other thing, Mary Beth, people have trouble with the number 8 one on how
Filling
this is, the answering the question, and we're not looking for people who are going to smile and be happy. I mean, it's really think about the impact. So if you're asking for new printers, or well, let's say you want a computer to link someone out to job so they can apply for a job. So for me, I would like to hear you tell or read that you would see people in your community have the ability to access, use technology to apply for a job and then possibly get that job. So later on, you would go on and say, hey, how'd that work out for you to use our new Chromebox? Did it work for you? Oh yeah, it was great. I got an interview and I've been employed. So that's a bigger impact than just they were smiling and happy. And we can someday talk about those outcome-based evaluations, and they're a little bit hard, but it's kind of what we're looking for. I mean, happiness is good, but it's also pretty subjective. So
yes, thank you, Margie. That's really good. Yeah, it sometimes seems like the question we ask is like, well, duh, but take it seriously and fill it out as much as you can. I see we're really close to the end here, and I wanted you guys to be aware of like the continuing education competitive grant. So when your library spends your $700 and there's still more CE events that you want to go to, you can apply for the CE competitive grant, and we can help you get that funding. We don't like to hear that you can't go to any more CE because you ran out of money. There's more money out there for you. You just have to apply for it. So that's what this one is. I talked briefly about the conference grant. Programming. The other one I wanted to spend some time on here is the technology improvement grant. In this one, there's a lot more details and criteria for it, so take some time and read through it, because we have been very specific about about what grants or what equipment you can be purchased with this technology grant. We're also asking for a technology plan and attaching a file. So this is one that you might need to sign in with a Google account. It doesn't have to be a library Google account. It can be any Google account. And the reason is because you have to attach a file. And then when we ask what technology you're replacing, be as specific as possible. That helps Andy and I, since we know your computers, kind of know which one you're talking about. And then when you talk about the technology that you're requesting to buy, be specific. So if you're like, oh, we're getting a Dell computer, we need to know all that detail. It sounds like gobbledygook, 8 gigs of RAM and the processing speed, all that information we need. You should be able to copy it from the page. And we're also asking for pictures from there. This is where we had somebody attach a web page, and it worked, but I had to do some finagling. So this is where send it as a PDF, I think would be the best way for that.
With the technology grant, the reason that you need to send the picture and you need to see the specifics is because the purpose of this grant is to help your library meet the 2016 Public Library Standards for Technology. And we want to make sure that you're purchasing equipment that's going to help your library meet that standard.
Thank you, Gail. Yes. And then we also ask if you consulted the CKLS IT manager for your purchase options. The reason we're asking that is because you might think you have the great computer picked out, and then we're going to look at it and say, this isn't going to do what you need it to. It doesn't have the right version of Windows. It doesn't have enough processing speed. So if you contact Andy beforehand, we're going to get it all laid out before you submit the grant. And if we see a problem, we'll contact you about it. Okay, I see we're almost done. So what I wanted, there is a couple questions in here. Danielle asks, from a reviewer's point of view, is it better to answer each question individually or do a full narrative? I like to see them answered individually because I've read those questions a dozen times and I still have to have somebody remind me what each number is. So for me to have that number, it helps me keep it straight. It's also easier for me when I go back to review. I can say, oh yeah, they answered all of those. And, you know, I've already read the grant once. I may have read it a couple times, but now when I'm looking at a stack of grants, I can go back and say, oh yeah, they answered all of those. And if you do it as big narrative, it might flow better for you, but it's harder for me to go through and say, oh yeah, they answered one, there's two, you know. So that's the way I think most prefer it, but I know that it could be a personal preference there.
I think, Maribeth, I think
Yeah.
most people agree that answering the question specifically is easier, because if you're sorting through 50 grant applications, trying to make heads or tails and being very fiscally responsible with the money and yet wanting to give it all away, the grant writers need to make it as simple on the committee, as easy on the committee as possible.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
a paragraph that tells the story is good, but answer each question specifically. And Amy at Otis asked if there are technology plan outlines or samples somewhere that we can use to help the board update or write one. And I told her, yes, you have some samples available, and we will send those out.
Yes, I will get those compiled and probably do some updating and some tweaking so they fit our libraries a little better. But yes, we will get those out, and we will get those sometime this year. I don't have a good time frame. The technology plan is not required in the technology improvement grant until 2021, so you still have some time to get those organized and get those settled. I had a thought and it went out of my brain, so hopefully it comes back. After 12 applications, it gets harder and harder as a reviewer to figure out whether everything has been covered in a narrative. Yes, thank you, Joanna. That's very true. So you have to decide, you know, you want your grant to stand out, but you also want to walk that line of, you know, taking it seriously, not being too flippant. You know, it can be it's kind of a tightrope walk there. But I think, you know, I think everybody has a good chance, you know, you follow these criteria, I think you can write a really good grant. One of the key points I want to just reiterate again is when you have a question, especially for a CKLS grant, contact me. I am an advisor on the competitive grants, the big one, the materials one for this year. I am not a voting member on the committee. So my goal is to help you get the best application in that you can. If you wait to the last day, I'm going to be limited to how much help I can give you. But if you turn it in early, I'll be able to give you more help and more feedback. And I might be able to, you know, change it back and forth several times to get it right. So a grant is something you want to start early, and then you have time to make it what it needs to be. All right, any other questions for me? Have I missed any over here?
I do. I want to go back for this year for the materials grant.
Okay.
When I did it the first time around, I was going through Apple. I sat there and picked out each and every single book and had a total amount. And then I was there when they reviewed them, and there were people who just said, books, $1,000. Would you want more specific, or do you want that general? Because I was kind of like going, okay, I guess I went overboard.
So for materials grant, we don't necessarily need to have, we're going to buy this title, this title, this title, but more of, we want to buy children's books that focus on health and nutrition. So you can be specific in a general way, or generally in a specific way. You know that you're going to get information that follows this criteria. And I think that is the way to go. There's going to be stuff that maybe you put in your materials list that by the time it gets through, there's better stuff there or other stuff that you want to add. And if you're specific, you know, the grant is going to be limited to how you wrote it. So you want to give yourself the flexibility you can while still being as specific as possible.
I would add another way to hedge your bet on the materials grant is that if you've had CKLS come and weed and they said that this is an area that you need to update in your library, and in your grant you say CKLS consultants suggested that we update this section of the library, that's going to be really strong.
Yes, I think that's
Marilyn, this is Patty. I, as a grant reviewer, and I always sit on the other side of this, but I've had my opportunity to write them as well. But, you know, it's much more compelling to me for you to send me some evidence. So if it's a matter of, hey, we've just started a brand new adult fiction book club, and we find that most of what's here is what our readers have already read. So now we're going to branch out and we're going to buy, we're going to do 5 months of mystery this year. We're going to do 5 months of sci-fi this year. This is where I'm going to focus my spending. You're just giving me an example of what you're doing. Or as Gail noted, CKLS was up to weed and completely wiped out our 600 adult space collection. We need to buy new materials to replace those, and our funds only allow $500 for the entire year for the entire library. I'm going to focus $250 of that money on this activity.
I think that's really good. Instead of focusing on the specific item, you're focusing on the specific need. And I think that's really what grants are going to look at. They want to know what your need is, and they want to know what your plan is to address that need. And I think if you keep that in mind, you'll be able to write a really good grant. All right, any more questions for me? All right, I have recorded this session, and so once we are done today, I will get it rendered and put onto YouTube, and I will send out the handouts as well. I won't probably have any technology stuff to add to the handouts, but I will send those out at a later date. We will be willing to help you with a technology plan, so if you're working on one and you run it past us, you can email that to me and I can look it over. We're here to help, and that's really what we want to do. I will say that the materials grant opens up on April 1st, so we still have a little time yet. We've also changed the closing date. It's going to be at the beginning of October instead of the end of it. And let me see if I can get to it here. It's not letting me scroll. Here we go. Maybe. It's not letting me do it. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, there we go, programming grant, materials grant. So here is a timeline for the big competitive materials grant. The submission is now due on October 1st. That gives the review committee more time to actually review the applications. That's why we moved that forward a little bit. You should be able to know what your award is by November 15th. We've moved that up a little bit too, and then you should know when funds will be distributed by December. This is one grant where we need to hear back from you whether you accept the grant or not. Sometimes when we have to do partial funding, sometimes that means you can't always accept it. So we need to hear back from you that yes, we can accept the grant as is. So that's very important. So that is what this December 1st deadline is here. Okay. All right, if anybody has any more questions, you can always shoot me an email. If you send it out via the CKLS Google groups, then everybody can join in, and that's fine with me. Thank you for joining us today, and stay warm out there and don't blow away. It's already started to snow and the ground is covered in the last hour. So we'll talk to you later. Bye.